What happens when a music legend refuses to play the game everyone expects him to play? Neil Diamond, the man behind Sweet Caroline and Crackling Rosie, sat across from Kelly Clarkson on her daytime talk show, and what started as a routine interview quickly spiraled into television chaos. By the end of this conversation, Diamond would storm off set, leaving Clarkson speechless and the audience in stunned silence. Make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think really pushed Diamond over the edge. The Kelly Clarkson show had been running smoothly that afternoon. Kelly bounced onto the stage in her signature style, greeting the audience with her infectious smile. Neil Diamond, dressed in his classic black shirt, settled into the guest chair with the confidence of someone who had done thousands of interviews over his 5-decade career. "I am so excited to have you here," Kelly began, her voice carrying that familiar warmth. "Neil Diamond, everybody. The man who gave us so many incredible songs that have become part of the soundtrack of our lives." Diamond nodded politely. "Thank you for having me, Kelly. It's good to be here. Now, I have to ask," Kelly continued, leaning forward. "Sweet Caroline has become this massive sing-along anthem. Did you ever imagine when you wrote that song that it would become what it is today? When you're writing a song, you're not thinking about stadiums full of people," Diamond replied. "You're thinking about the melody, the words, the feeling you're trying to capture. Sweet Caroline was personal to me. It was about innocence, about a moment in time." Kelly's expression brightened. "That's beautiful. And speaking of personal, I know our viewers love hearing about the inspiration behind the music. There have been so many stories about who Caroline actually was. Some say it was Caroline Kennedy, others say it was your wife at the time. Can you set the record straight for us?" Diamond's posture shifted slightly. "You know, Kelly, I've answered that question more times than I can count. The song means different things to different people now. That's what matters. But surely, you can give us something," Kelly pressed. "Our audience would love to know the real story behind one of the most beloved songs in American music." "The real story," Diamond repeated, his voice taking on a sharper edge, "is that some things are meant to remain personal. The song exists. People connect with it. Isn't that enough?" Kelly laughed nervously. "Well, you're certainly mysterious about it, but that's part of your charm, right?" The enigmatic Neil Diamond. "I'm not trying to be mysterious," Diamond said, his tone becoming pointed. "I'm trying to maintain some dignity in an industry that wants to turn everything into a soundbite." The studio audience was beginning to sense the tension. Kelly's smile faltered before she recovered. "I didn't mean to offend you. I'm just trying to give our viewers a glimpse into the man behind the music." "The man behind the music," Diamond repeated, shaking his head. "You want to know about the man behind the music? The man behind the music has been performing for over 50 years. He's written songs that have touched millions of people. He's dealt with critics who didn't understand what he was doing, record executives who tried to change his sound, and interviewers who want to reduce his life's work to trivia." Kelly's demeanor shifted. The warm, bubbly host was replaced by something more defensive. "Neil, I think you're misunderstanding what we're trying to do here. This is a celebration of your music and your career. We're not trying to reduce anything." "A celebration?" Diamond's voice rose. "You want to celebrate my music by dissecting it like a biology experiment, by demanding I explain every creative choice I've ever made." "That's not what I'm doing," Kelly shot back, her voice becoming firmer. "I'm asking normal interview questions that any artist would expect. Questions about inspiration, about the creative process. This is what we do on talk shows." "Maybe that's the problem," Diamond said, his eyes narrowing. "Maybe talk shows have forgotten that artists are human beings, not content machines designed to feed your segments." The camera operators were getting shots of the audience, many shifting uncomfortably in their seats. This was not the lighthearted interview they had expected. Kelly took a deep breath, trying to regain control. "Neil, I understand that you're passionate about your art, and I respect that, but I'm also trying to do my job here. We have a show to do, and our viewers tune in to learn about their favorite artists." "Your job," Diamond said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Your job is to entertain people by making me dance like a trained seal. Is that it?" "That's not fair," Kelly replied, her voice rising. "I've built my career on treating my guests with respect and creating a space where they can share their stories authentically." "Authentically?" Diamond laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want authenticity. Here's authentic. I'm tired of being asked the same questions by people who don't really listen to the answers. I'm tired of being expected to perform my life story on demand." The tension in the studio was palpable. Production assistants were exchanging worried glances, and the audience was completely silent, unsure whether they should be watching this unfold. Kelly's jaw tightened. "You know what, Neil? I've interviewed hundreds of artists on this show. Some have been difficult, some have been shy, some have been larger than life. But I've never had someone sit in that chair and act like they're too good to be here. Too good to be here." Diamond's voice was incredulous. "I came here in good faith. Kelly, I came here to talk about my music, my new projects, the things that matter to me as an artist. Instead, you want to turn me into a nostalgia act Picking apart songs I wrote decades ago for your entertainment value. I'm trying to connect with you, Kelly said, her frustration evident. I'm trying to help our viewers understand who you are as a person, not just as a performer. You want to understand who I am. Diamond leaned forward, his voice intense. I'm someone who has dedicated his entire life to music, who has poured his heart and soul into every song, every performance, every moment on stage. I'm someone who believes that art should speak for itself, not be explained to death by people who think they need to know every detail to appreciate it. Kelly's face was flushed now, her composure cracking. And I'm someone who has also dedicated her life to music, who has also poured her heart and soul into every performance. The difference is, I don't think I'm above connecting with people, above sharing my story, above being human in public. Diamond stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Above being human, you think discussing my private life on national television makes me more human. I think being willing to open up, to be vulnerable, to share the experiences that shaped your art. That's what makes you human, Kelly shot back, also standing now. What makes you relatable? What makes you more than just a voice on the radio? Relatable, Diamond spat. There's that word again. Everything has to be relatable. Now, art used to be about reaching for something higher, something transcendent. Now it's all about making sure everyone can understand it, can relate to it, can consume it easily. The studio fell into an eerie silence. Kelly and Diamond faced each other across the interview space, both breathing heavily, both clearly angry. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether to applaud, boo, or simply sit in stunned silence. You know what? Kelly said finally, her voice tight with controlled anger. Maybe you're right. Maybe I don't understand your art. Maybe I'm just another talk show host asking stupid questions. But at least I'm trying to build bridges between artists and audiences instead of burning them down. Diamond's expression hardened. Some bridges aren't worth building, Kelly. Some things are sacred. Sacred. Kelly's voice was sharp now. Your songs are sacred. Your inspiration is sacred. You know what I think is sacred? The connection between an artist and their fans. The willingness to share something real, something meaningful. That's what I try to create on this show. By exploiting personal moments for ratings, Diamond challenged. By celebrating the human experience through music, Kelly fired back. By showing people that their favorite artists are real people with real stories, real struggles, real triumphs. Diamond shook his head, his face a mask of disappointment and disgust. You don't get it. You'll never get it. Then help me get it, Kelly pleaded, her anger giving way to frustration. Instead of standing there, acting superior, help me understand what you think I'm missing. What you're missing, Diamond said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Is that not everything needs to be shared? Not everything needs to be explained. Not everything needs to be made accessible to everyone. The confrontation was reaching a boiling point, and everyone in the studio could feel it. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of what was becoming one of the most explosive interviews in daytime television history. Kelly threw her hands up in exasperation. So what are you saying? That music should only be for an elite few who can appreciate it without context? That fans don't deserve to understand the artists they love? I'm saying, Diamond replied, his voice rising to match hers, that mystery is part of art. That not knowing every detail about how something was created allows people to make it their own. When you dissect a song to death, when you explain every metaphor, every inspiration, every personal detail, you kill the magic. The magic. Kelly's voice cracked with disbelief. The magic is in the connection. Neil, the magic is when someone hears your story and realizes they're not alone in their struggles. The magic is when art becomes a bridge between human experiences. No, Diamond said firmly, pointing a finger at her. The magic is in the music itself. The magic is in the melody that moves you, the words that speak to your soul, the feeling you get when you hear something that touches something deep inside you. That's magic. What you're talking about is voyeurism. The word hung in the air, like a slap. Kelly's face went pale, then flushed red. Voyeurism. You think what I do is voyeurism. I think what you do, Diamond said, his voice cold and measured, is take something beautiful and mysterious and turn it into gossip. You take art and turn it into entertainment. You take the sacred and make it profane. Kelly's hands were shaking. Now, her composure completely shattered. How dare you? How dare you come on my show and insult not just me, but every single person who works here, every guest who has sat in that chair and opened their heart to our audience. I'm not insulting anyone, Diamond said, though his tone suggested otherwise. I'm simply stating a fact. This industry has lost its way. Everything has to be content now. Everything has to be shared, liked, commented on, dissected. There's no room for mystery anymore. There's no room for the unknown. You know what there's no room for? Kelly shot back, her voice rising to a shout. There's no room for artists who think they're too good for their fans. There's no room for people who create art and then act like they're doing the world a favor by sharing it. Too good for my fans. Diamond's voice was incredulous. I've spent my entire career serving my fans. I've performed when I was sick, when I was heartbroken, when I could barely stand. I've given everything I had to give, night after night, year after year. But I draw the line at turning my personal life into a circus act. Nobody's asking you to turn your life into a circus act, Kelly said, her voice breaking slightly. I'm asking you to be human. I'm asking you to acknowledge that the people who buy your records, who come to your concerts, who sing your songs at their weddings and funerals, deserve to know something about the person behind the music. They know everything they need to. No, Diamond replied coldly. They know my songs. They know my voice. They know how my music makes them feel. What more do they need? They need to know that you're real, Kelly said, tears of frustration beginning to form in her eyes. They need to know that you're not just some untouchable figure on a pedestal. They need to know that you understand what it's like to be human, to struggle, to love, to lose. And you think the only way to show that is by spilling my guts on national television? Diamond asked, his voice dripping with contempt. I think the only way to show that is by being willing to connect with people, Kelly replied. By being willing to be vulnerable, to share something real, to let people see that you're more than just a voice on the radio. Diamond stared at her for a long moment, his face a mask of cold fury. You want vulnerability, you want real. Here's real. I've been in this business for over 50 years. I've seen trends come and go. I've watched the industry change from something that valued artistry to something that values spectacle. I've watched as privacy became a dirty word and mystery became something to be eliminated. And I've watched, Kelly countered, as artists became so disconnected from their audiences that they forgot why they started making music in the first place. I've watched as the gap between performers and fans grew so wide that music stopped being about human connection and started being about worship. Maybe some things should be worshipped, Diamond said quietly. Maybe some things should be held sacred. Maybe some things should remain untouched by the grubby hands of commerce and celebrity culture. And maybe, Kelly said, her voice equally quiet but infinitely more dangerous, some artists should remember that without fans, without audiences, without people who care enough to want to know them, they're just people singing to themselves in empty rooms. The silence that followed was deafening. Diamond's face went through a series of emotions, anger, hurt, and finally, resignation. He looked around the studio, taking in the cameras, the audience, the production crew, all staring at him with a mixture of shock and fascination. You know what, Kelly? He said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. You're absolutely right. Maybe I am just a person singing to myself in an empty room. And maybe that's exactly where I belong. He reached down and unclipped his wireless microphone, letting it drop to the floor with a dull thud. The sound echoed through the studio like a gunshot. Neil, wait, Kelly said, her anger immediately replaced by panic. I didn't mean, we can start over. We can no, Diamond said, shaking his head. We can't start over. This is what it is. This is what we've become. This is what the industry has become, and I want no part of it. He turned toward the edge of the stage, then paused and looked back at Kelly. You want to know the real story behind Sweet Caroline? You want to know the inspiration, the meaning, the personal details that will make your audience feel connected to me? Kelly nodded eagerly, hope flickering in her eyes. The real story, Diamond said, his voice heavy with sadness, is that it was written by a young man who believed in the power of music to touch people's souls without needing to explain itself. It was written by someone who thought that art could speak for itself, that mystery was part of beauty, that not everything needed to be understood to be appreciated. He paused, looking directly into the camera. That young man is dead now. He died somewhere between the first time someone asked him to explain his art and the last time he believed that music could exist without being dissected, analyzed, and reduced to content. The studio was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Kelly stood frozen, her mouth slightly open, clearly searching for words that wouldn't come. Goodbye, Kelly, Diamond said. I hope you get the ratings you're looking for. And with that, he walked off the stage, leaving Kelly standing alone in front of a stunned audience and a crew of cameramen who weren't sure whether to keep rolling or cut to commercial. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the studio until they faded into silence, leaving behind only the awkward coughs of audience members and the quiet whir of cameras that were still recording what had just become the most talked about interview disaster in daytime television history. Kelly stood frozen on the stage, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she tried to process what had just happened. The audience sat in stunned silence, many with their mouths agape, others looking around nervously as if waiting for someone to tell them this was all part of some elaborate joke. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every second of her shock and confusion. Kelly began, her voice barely audible. She cleared her throat and tried again. I'm sorry, everyone. I don't know what just happened here. She looked toward the wings where Diamond had disappeared, then back at the audience, her professional instincts warring with her genuine bewilderment. Ladies and gentlemen, Neil Diamond, everybody. A few people started to clap uncertainly, but the applause died quickly. leaving the studio in an uncomfortable silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Kelly walked back to her chair, her legs visibly shaking. She sat down heavily, running her hands through her hair. You know what? I'm just going to be honest with you all. I have no idea what just happened. I've been doing this for years, and I've never, ever had an interview go like that. She looked directly into the camera, her composure slowly returning. I came into this wanting to celebrate Neil Diamond's incredible career. I wanted to share his stories with you, to give you a glimpse into the man behind the music you love. And somehow, that became, well, you all saw what it became. The audience was beginning to respond now, a few murmurs of sympathy and support rippling through the studio. Kelly seemed to draw strength from their reaction. I keep thinking about what he said, she continued, her voice gaining strength. About mystery being part of art, about not everything needing to be explained. And you know what? Maybe he's right about some things. Maybe there is something beautiful about leaving some things unexplained, about letting music speak for itself. She paused, looking down at her hands. But I also think about all of you. I think about the letters I get from viewers who tell me that hearing their favorite artist story helped them through a difficult time. I think about the fans who feel less alone in the world because they learned that their musical hero went through the same struggles they did. Kelly's voice was getting stronger now, more confident. I think about the young girl who started believing in herself because she heard how her favorite singer overcame self-doubt. I think about the man who found the courage to tell his family he loved them because he heard how an artist regretted not doing the same. I think about the woman who decided to pursue her dreams because she learned that success doesn't always come easy, even for the stars she admires. The audience was responding more now, nodding along with her words. Kelly was finding her footing, transforming from the shell-shocked host into the passionate advocate for human connection that her fans knew and loved. Is that voyeurism? She asked, her voice rising with conviction. Is it exploiting personal moments for ratings? Or is it recognizing that we're all human beings trying to figure out this crazy world? And maybe, just maybe, we can help each other by sharing our stories. She stood up again, this time with purpose rather than anger. I've had hundreds of guests sit in that chair. Musicians, actors, authors, athletes, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And do you know what the best interviews have in common? They're the ones where the guest and I both learn something, where we both walk away changed, where we both remember that despite our different paths, we're all just people trying to connect with other people. Kelly looked toward the wings again, her expression softening. I'm sorry that Mr. Diamond felt ambushed. I'm sorry that what I intended as curiosity came across as intrusion. I'm sorry that my attempt to build a bridge felt like an attack on something he holds sacred. That was never my intention. She turned back to the audience, her voice growing more passionate. But I'm not sorry for believing that sharing our stories matters. I'm not sorry for thinking that vulnerability takes courage, not weakness. I'm not sorry for believing that when we let people see our humanity, we give them permission to embrace their own. The audience was fully engaged now, some nodding enthusiastically, others wiping away tears. Kelly was hitting her stride, channeling her hurt and confusion into something more powerful. Maybe there's a balance, she said, her voice thoughtful. Maybe there's a way to honor both the mystery and the connection. Maybe there's a way to celebrate art while also celebrating the human beings who create it. Maybe there's room for both, the sacred and the shared. She walked closer to the audience, her voice becoming more intimate. I started this show because I believe in the power of conversation. I believe that when we talk to each other, really talk to each other, we find out we're not as different as we think. I believe that stories have the power to heal, to inspire, to change lives. Kelly's eyes were bright with tears now, but her voice remained strong. And maybe that's naive. Maybe that's simplistic. Maybe that's everything that's wrong with modern celebrity culture. But I'd rather be naive and hopeful than cynical and isolated. I'd rather risk being accused of voyeurism than miss the chance to help someone feel less alone. She looked directly into the camera, speaking directly to her viewers. If you're watching this at home, if you're struggling with something, if you're feeling like you're the only one who doesn't have it all figured out, I want you to know that you're not alone. Everyone, and I mean everyone, is just making it up as they go along. Even the legends, even the icons, even the people who seem to have it all figured out. The audience burst into applause, finally finding their voice. Kelly smiled for the first time since Diamond's exit, looking genuinely moved by their support. We're going to take a quick break, she said, her professional demeanor returning. When we come back, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about what just happened. We're going to talk about art and privacy and the relationship between artists and fans. And we're going to do it together, because that's what we do here. We figure things out together. As the cameras pulled back for the commercial break, Kelly remained standing, accepting hugs from audience members who had rushed to the stage. Her face showed a mixture of exhaustion, hurt, and determination. She had been blindsided by one of the most difficult interviews of her career. But she was doing what she always did, turning the experience into something meaningful, something that could help others. The studio buzzed with excited chatter as people processed what they had just witnessed. Some were clearly Team Kelly, praising her grace under pressure and her commitment to human connection. Others seemed more sympathetic to Diamond's position, arguing that artists deserved privacy and that not everything needed to be shared. But everyone agreed on one thing: they had just witnessed something extraordinary. They had seen two passionate people with fundamentally different views about art, celebrity, and human connection clash in the most public way possible. They had seen vulnerability, and anger, and hurt, and hope, all playing out in real time. As the commercial break continued, Kelly wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. She had a show to finish, an audience to serve, and a message to deliver. Whatever had just happened with Neil Diamond, she was going to use it to do what she always tried to do: make her viewers feel less alone in the world. The cameras would roll again in a few minutes, and Kelly Clarkson would be ready. Because that's what she did. That's what she had always done. She took the messy, complicated, sometimes painful business of being human and found a way to make it beautiful. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more behind-the-scenes drama from the entertainment world. And let me know in the comments, do you think Kelly was right to push for personal details? Or was Neil Diamond justified in protecting his privacy?